So, welcome to the Big Red Show, everyone. This is our episode 3. What we try to do in the Big Red Conversations is get leaders and entrepreneurs from around the world to have a chat with us, to know about their life, about what they're up to. And I could not be more sort of excited to have today a friend of mine, and now, of course, a budding entrepreneur, Arun Saigal, who's the founder and CEO of Thunkable. Welcome to the show, Arun.
Thanks so much, Rishi. So good to be here. So good to see you and to be part of this series. Very excited to chat today.
Awesome, Arun. So I've known you, I got to have the pleasure of meeting you at Phillips Academy, Andover, only for a short time, though, I would say. So what we'll do is, from the beginning, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Of course, I know you went to Phillips Academy for high school, but sort of delving down a little bit into where did you go to middle school before that? We'll talk about later on a bit about your high school experience as well, when I was not there. And then, of course, we'll move on to MIT and all the wonderful things you're doing with Thunkable. So a little bit about personal information about Arun Saigal and where you come from.
Yeah, again, thanks so much for having me. So I grew up in Burlington, Massachusetts, so just about 10 miles or so outside of Boston. That's where I lived all of my life until high school. And so I grew up there, went to middle school, elementary school in Burlington, Marshall Simons Middle School, which was, the public school there, and always was very into math and science and engineering, as well as into music. And so did a lot of both of those growing up, and that kind of continued to shape my journey as I went past middle school and into high school, where I went to Phillips Academy in Andover, which is eventually where we had the opportunity to meet. And then from there, obviously, to MIT and out to San Francisco in the Bay Area.
Wow. So Arun, would love to know, from the beginning, tell us a little bit about your high school experience. I know you did a million things out there, but if you have to really, tell us about 2 or 3 things that you would say were your main focus moving on in high school, what would you say those were? And if you could sort of tell us, we always say in the show and to our students who'll be tuning in, a lot of high schoolers, that you have to be sort of a jack of all, but a master of one. So if you could sort of talk about, you were master of all, really, even in high school, but still, if you have to pinpoint on 1 or 2 activities that you feel sort of culminated throughout your high school experience, what would those be?
Absolutely. Very kind words. I think in high school, as you said, I did a lot of things because I really wanted to explore. I think one of the joys of going to a high school like Phillips Academy in Andover is that there's such a broad set of opportunities, things you can try, everything in the arts, the music, the sciences, engineering, food, anything you can think of, sports, athletics, you can do so much there. And so I tried to do some of everything and learn a little bit of everything. But I think for me, the main things that I focused on, the biggest was definitely math, science, and engineering, and I tie that all together. So critical thinking, computational thinking, programming, etc. I focused a lot of my time on that in high school because that's where I got the most excited. It started with math and physics and chemistry type of classes, and then I took computer science, and that really opened my world up, where I said, oh my gosh, by writing a few lines of code, I can empower and enable people to solve problems for themselves any way they want all over the world. And that was something so powerful, especially thinking about, the World Wide Web coming about in the 90s, and then all of a sudden people having more democratized access to actually build websites and things like that for the web. And then you fast forward to the late 2000s, 07 iPhone comes out, 08 Android comes out, and all of a sudden now people have these really powerful computers in their pockets, and and I was so excited by the power of what was possible. At the time, there was, it's not that there was an app for everything like there is now. It wasn't that everyone had a smartphone or even a cell phone at that time. But you could see that was where the world was going. And that was what really excited me in high school and what I ended up spending a lot of my time on. And that also is what ended up pushing me towards, going into engineering and going to MIT afterwards.
Okay. And talk about, again, as I said, if you have to really pinpoint when you were thinking about engineering, what were some of the things that excited you in high school? We want to sort of deep dive for the students who will be watching this show to let them know what are some of the avenues that you can explore if you are looking at colleges like MIT or any other engineering college. I remember seeing your resume for the first time, and I was boggled because I couldn't believe as a high school student how much work you had already done. So if you could sort of talk to us for a couple of minutes about all of your high school, then the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the focuses I had in high school was really around research, around science and engineering research. And so I spent a lot of time in my third and fourth year of high school focusing on how to solve interesting problems. Actually, it started with chemistry and chemical engineering. I was really early on excited about how you can solve so many of the basic world problems with materials, with manufacturing, with basic building blocks from atoms and compounds you can turn into anything that we can touch and feel around us. And that was so cool, from simple atoms and molecules to the devices we have, everything we touch. It all comes from these basic building blocks. And so in high school, I spent a lot of time doing research. And again, Phillips Academy had an amazing research facility where we actually had high quality labs at MIT. And then I was very fortunate to get a research position at Tufts University as well. And so I split my time between Phillips Academy and actually going to Tufts University roughly once a week, and then spending my summers there doing very intensive chemicals research. And the end result of that was actually our final year at school, something that you were involved with, where we got to go to Poland for the International Conference of Young Scientists. And so the research that I did ended up resulting in a couple of papers that we submitted to various publications and got published, as well as actually to winning a gold medal at the International Conference of Young Scientists. And that year it was hosted in Poland. And so we went with a contingent from Phillips Academy and got to represent the United States in this competition, in this international competition. And that, for me, I think was really important, because what I learned there, I think, was a couple things. One, about how to do fundamental research, how to have a basic idea and actually take that into the lab and say, okay, this idea is gonna, here is a hypothesis I have, here's an idea that I've structured, and how do we actually turn that into a scientific experiment, get results, prove that they're valid, that they're statistically significant, make sure that we get peers, professors, et cetera, reading, reviewing, and writing it up with us, and then, present it to a much larger audience of peers in the world. And so I think that was really exciting for me. And then two, the end of that was going to this international competition and actually meeting and talking to a number of students and faculty member across the globe who were really passionate about this research, and looking at not just what I was doing in the lab, but what people were doing globally, and realizing kind of, oh my gosh, there's such a large world out there of people who are trying to solve similar problems. And wouldn't it be so cool if we could collaborate, if we could work together, et cetera. And that, I think, was a really eye-opening experience for me in the early days. And that was probably something I spent, I'd say, the most time on, that I went really deep on, was on chemicals research throughout high school.
That's amazing, Arun. So last question on research, because this question keeps coming up for high schoolers. here in India as well, that they have just brilliant ideas in their mind, and the research faculty, in colleges are, are really slow to respond to their requests. And words like peer review, words like, when you actually have to get down to getting your research and hypothesis, like statistically significant, hypothesis out there, it's really hard for these young high schoolers to figure out what's the way to best approach, research in their high school career. So what would be one advice that you would give them, whether that's in chemical research, whether it's any research field related to pure sciences?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to get started however you can. And I get that sounds, but so for example, what's so cool about the world we live in today is there are so many opportunities, so many technological opportunities that are available. So for example, if you're interested in doing research on circuits and things like that, you can go buy basic circuit boards, you can buy light bulbs, you can buy resistors, things like that. It's all available online. It's easy to find. And what's cool about that is not only can you buy all of these things, but there are even online digital versions of these types of labs. My alma mater, as we talked about, MIT, is has built a bunch of online circuits classes and things like that where you can just dabble around. There are ways that you can actually go online and say, hey, if I combine chemical A and B, what actually happens? And so you have so many tools available online, as well as simple things that you can buy on the store and just start with. Because to your point, professors are getting all these emails, all these phone calls, et cetera, and saying, hey, can you talk to me? Can you work with me, et cetera? And so I think the best thing you can do as a high schooler is you need to prove that you're not just any other high schooler. You're better than the rest. You have more experience than the rest. How do you do that? You do that by reading the papers of the professors that you're interested in working in, coming up with your own ideas, and then in whatever way you can, prove that you've made some progress. Either, get access to a lab by emailing some professor, getting a friend who's in college to take you in. MIT is an amazing university where, it's a very open campus. And so as a student there, I was, able to bring friends with me onto the campus and allow them to explore, et cetera. So if you can get that kind of access, that's phenomenal. But even if not, just what's available online is so rich that definitely taking the opportunity to not just say, hey, I want to work with you, professor, but also here are some things I've done that prove that I can actually be a really great contributor in your lab. That's the thing you need to do, because if you get an email saying, hey, not only I want to work with you, but I've also read your papers and done some new and interesting work based on ideas I had, they're going to be excited to talk to you and work with you.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, Arun. Thank you for that. Okay, now let's move to the second love of your life other than sciences, which is music as well. You're a conductor right now you conduct orchestras in San Francisco now and work with the biggest, symphonies out there. But tell us about your love for music in high school and maybe a couple of things that you were really excited with in the music domain while you were in high school.
Absolutely. So I'm very fortunate to have played music throughout my life from a very young age. My mother is actually a Bharatanatyam dance teacher, and so music was always in the house, always part of the family. And so growing up, I did a variety of things. I played Western classical music, playing viola, from when I was very young, even till date, I still play. I played a trombone, and then I also played mridangam. And then later growing up, I started learning a lot of music theory, conducting, etc. And so in high school, I think was really the time that I figured out what I liked in music. When you're younger, you're just learning to play the instrument, get the notes, things like that. But high school was the time where it went for me from, hey, I like doing a bunch of things, to really saying, these are the few things I care about. And for me, it was actually really focused around, I would say, two things. One is the conducting, arranging, composing side, really the kind of, high level view of it. And then two was really being creative and combining cultures. And I think what I was very fortunate with is that I had experience, serious training in Western classical music, in South Indian classical music, in Western jazz. And so to be able to put these different things together and actually make something new and innovative was something that I became really excited about in high school, and till date, still have continued doing. So in high school, one of the first things that happened was, as I came to Andover, actually, there were a group of folks who were trying to, bridge different cultures and different types of music. So I started working with them. And then in my career at Andover, actually, Andover had a student-run orchestra. So an orchestra conducted and directed and fully run by the students. And so I was very fortunate that by the time I was graduating from Andover, I actually became the conductor and director of this symphony. And so I had the opportunity not only to share my ideas and my music, but also direct an actual symphony, have a group of 40, 50 students who were looking at me to actually direct. And that's one of those interesting things where conducting is very interesting, where until you have experience, it's very hard to get experience. And in America, actually, there is no even undergraduate degree in conducting. And so if you're not going to leave the country for your studies, basically until graduate school, you don't really get experience conducting usually. So I was very fortunate that in high school, I found a great opportunity to be a conductor. And also what we did was we would start arranging pieces. So we would take, for example, pop music or take Hindustani music or take any type of music and then rewrite it for a symphony. And so what that allowed me to do was all of a sudden explore different cultures. So there's, for example, for the India Republic Day in the US, for the celebrations there, what we did was we took the song Halla Bol, we rewrote it for an orchestra, had mridangam playing, and then had a vocalist singing. Now, I don't think that's ever been done before. Western classical orchestra playing with mridangam, playing with the Bangladeshi singer. And so we put that all together, and it was an amazing performance. We had, 3,000 or so folks in the audience. And what was really cool about that is all of a sudden we were able to bridge different ideas and put them together in one. And even till date, last year, actually, in summer of 2019, I was able to bring a bunch of hip hop artists in the Bay Area who were rappers, beatboxers, etc., and rewrite the words to a Western classical piece called Peter and the Wolf by Prokofiev. We had the symphony play the music, but instead of a narration, which usually happens, just, a standard straightforward English narration, we actually made that into a rap. So we had beatboxers and rap artists performing with, I'm really lucky to be able to combine different types of genres of music together to make something really phenomenal. But that really all came from my experiences in high school.
And I remember talking to you in Andover, and you did manage to get a grant to get one of the best mridangam maestros to come to Andover and play one of the days. And that was amazing as well.
Yeah, we were really fortunate to have one of the greatest maestros of all time, Manargadi Ishwaran. He, one of the most legendary mridangam players in history. And we were very fortunate at Andover to actually be able to get a grant to bring him to campus for 2 weeks, actually, where he not only performed for us, but he actually went to nearly every music class available on campus and actually spent a little time with every student, teaching them mridangam, teaching them a little bit about Carnatic music, and giving them an experience with, again, one of the greatest alive. And to get that opportunity to bring him to campus and spend time with him is one of the greatest life highlights I have in my musical career.
Okay, before we move on to the next segment, which is going to be college, last question again, and we're trying to sort of deep dive into every aspect because it's very different for high schoolers here in India. I meet a lot of talented musicians who have done, different levels of, they're pianists or, play other instruments and reach to a certain level in Trinity examination or other forms. What is the one piece of advice you would give to these young students who are either playing or creating music the way forward, really, with their music and to take it to the next level. I know that Phillips Academy, compared to the other schools, offered you all a lot more, but still, living for Indian students out here, what is maybe that one piece of advice Arun Saigal, the conductor, the composer, can give them?
I think the biggest thing is getting your music out there. What's really amazing about the time we live in that didn't exist before is all of a sudden you can put things on YouTube, you can put things on Spotify, you can get things out there. And what's really amazing is, when I was growing up, I didn't have those platforms to get my music out there. So I would do a show and it would be amazing, but it would be restricted to an audience and whoever would come to my parents' house and see the video that they took of it. Now all of a sudden you can put an idea together and you can put it online and the world can see it. There are now tools, especially in the past year where people have more been on lockdown and not been going out and about. What's been really interesting is there are so many asynchronous tools online where you can actually go make music with someone else, put something together, and then make even videos in bits and pieces, use some sort of movie editor, put it together, and all of a sudden put content out there. And now anyone can be an artist who has produced music, who has mastered their sound and put it live for anyone. And I think the biggest thing today is not being afraid to get your music out there, because the moment you get it out there, all of a sudden you can have different collaborations. People can find you in various ways that they never have before. I've been so fortunate to play with so many different artists of all kinds of genres, from Grammy-winning composers and a cappella artists and jazz musicians and Latin musicians. And it's all been not for any reason except for the fact that my music was out there. Things I was doing was out there. It was available and people saw it and said, hey, I like what you're doing there. Can we work together and do something else here? And what's cool now, unlike other past generations, is it's very easy to do. And especially with music, there's no age restrictions. There's no anything. Anyone can make amazing music. And if you get it out there and people find you, they will work with you on amazing music. I have worked with, young kids on shows. I have worked with grandparents on shows and everything in between, right? There's no age restriction. All that matters is that your music is out there. People are able to find you and people are able to hear what you have to offer. So don't be shy about it and share it. And if and when you do, whether it's, other musicians you're looking to connect with, other opportunities outside of music, there's so many opportunities that I've gotten, investors I've met that came through music, that we ended up, working together in different regards. But the amount of opportunities that the musical doors open is just phenomenal.
Wow. Thank you for giving that piece of advice to all our students. Now moving on to your college life, Arun. Of course, I'm pretty sure you could have gone into any college in the world out there. But tell us, other than being 10 miles away from your home, which was, I'm sure, not the reason you chose MIT, what were some of the other reasons that really attracted you to MIT compared to a Caltech or compared to a Stanford, where a lot of good research opportunities are also available? What was that one factor you would say? And I know there are many that got you to MIT.
For sure. So I'll start by saying I think every college, especially in America, is really amazing. America is full of amazing universities, and no matter which one you go to, you can end up being very successful. At our company today, we have people who graduated from all kinds of universities, from universities that I'm sure many of your students have heard of to universities that probably none of them have heard of. And they're all phenomenally talented people. And I think that's what's so great about American universities, is that they all have a standard, a basic standard, and going to any of them will do you well. With that caveat, I will say, so MIT for me, I think, was a particularly good fit. I think the most important thing when determining what university you want to go to is of course the people, the environment. I think MIT, the size of the university, the types of people it attracted, and its surroundings were really, really exciting for me. I think, I have many friends who have gone to schools you mentioned, Stanford, Caltech, et cetera, and they're phenomenal schools. And I wouldn't say one is better than another, but I do think the type of learning you get and the type of opportunities you get are really, really different at each. And so for me, I think MIT was someplace I was really passionate about. And I think a few reasons. One, I think just I knew I wanted to do computer science by the time I was going to college. And I think the fact that, I could work with people like various advisors I had, for example, Hal Abelson, who is, one of the godfathers of building education type of technology. Another, advisor I had, Tim Berners-Lee, he's the guy who made the World Wide Web. And, me and him would sit down at lab lunch, and just having those types of people available was amazing. And I think that was something that I was so excited about that MIT offered. The other thing that I think was really cool about MIT is that it was in Boston. And in addition to being close to home, what's cool about Boston specifically is there are so many universities and colleges that are so close to each other. And so I could do collaborations and work with friends and professors who were at Harvard University, who were at Tufts University, who were at Northeastern University, who were at the New England Conservatory and Berklee College of Music. I had access to all of these faculty and all of these students, and they were all, within just a couple kilometer radius of where I was. And I think that was such a cool thing to have that is really unique to, I think, the Boston University ecosystem that I haven't seen replicated anywhere else. I think, lastly, I think just like I said, I'll go back to it, the culture, the type of people that were on campus were the type of people that I felt I got along with. It was the type of, the way the campus culture worked, everything from the fraternity and sorority life to how they balanced extracurriculars with on-campus, to the size of the school. There are certain schools that are phenomenal, like let's say UC Berkeley, an amazing school, very, very large. There are schools like Caltech, as you mentioned, again, an amazing university, very, very small. And then, MIT was somewhere in the middle, and that size, felt right for me. Big enough that there were enough different people, but small enough that I could get to know, most of the people or a large number of people on campus. And so that was what made MIT really special to me.
Okay, and let's talk about MIT a bit more. I know you graduated with a dual degree, so you completed your bachelor's in science and then went on to do master's in mechanical engineering as well, right? And you completed all of that in a course of 5 years?
Yeah, I did electrical engineering and computer science, actually. So I did bachelor's, my bachelor's of science and then my master's in engineering. And I did that in just about 4 years. So I did, the undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and computer science, and then the master's as well, also in electrical engineering and computer science with a focus on AI specifically.
Wow. And all of that took you 5 years, or you completed that in 4 years?
It was 4 years that it took me to do all that.
So you came out with the master's degree within 4 years at MIT?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And I'm sure that is a tough spot. So would you recommend students to do that? Or, I mean, I know everyone has to go at their own pace, but did you feel comfortable doing a dual degree, doing a master's and all completing in 4 years? Or did you think that still gave you enough time to collaborate? Because I'm sure knowing you were involved with a lot of clubs, a lot of collaborations, even in university. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think for me it worked out. I wasn't one of those. I think there are folks who are like, okay, I'm going to just work all the time and have, no friends and do nothing extracurricular because I want to get it done soon. I wasn't trying to get it done, super fast. I wasn't like, my goal wasn't to do that necessarily. What I think is cool about following your passions and what you want to do is if you do, often things work out. So in my case specifically, I was really excited about the research I was doing. And I got involved in the research from my first year at MIT itself. And so by the time my fourth year came around, actually, I I had planned to either take some time off before doing a master's, or if I did, at least, spend 5 years or 6 years. And by the end of it, my advisor, who I mentioned before, this guy, Hal Abelson, said, hey, you've done enough research here and written enough papers and things like that this actually, would be a master's thesis if you want it to be. And so then I looked at the course requirement, and I was just a couple courses shy. Again, not because I had necessarily planned all of this, but because there were a couple graduate courses I had taken as an undergrad that I was really excited about the material and I wanted to learn about. And so it basically came to my last year in the end of the fall semester. So I had one semester left, which was the spring semester, when I realized, oh, wow, if I just put in a little extra effort and basically write up my thesis, I'll end up getting my master's. And so it was one of those where I wasn't, I didn't come in with I'm going to be this overachiever who's, not going to do anything else and just focus on this. It was one of those, I did the things that I was excited about and worked with, really phenomenal lab mates and advisors. And the end result was we ended up doing really good work, which eventually turned into Thunkable. And that was really exciting and really, really awesome. So I was really happy to see that. To your point on doing other things, I definitely did still do a lot outside of just the classroom. I was involved in student government. I ran actually a South Asian Western pop a cappella group that did medleys and mashups of that. I was involved in Greek life in a fraternity. I was involved with a number of organizations on campus, volunteering, nonprofit, things like that. And so I did do a lot on campus. And this isn't to say, I did all these things and it was amazing. It's one of these things where at a place like MIT, it was very accepted and excited and encouraged that you do lots of things. And so, I was very excited to do all these things. But like I said, it wasn't just that I was heads down trying to say I have to be done in 4 years, but I was really excited about the work I did and naturally got to a point of, hey, I've now spent a lot of time doing research, et cetera. This can actually turn into a master's and even, fast forwarding a little past that ended up turning into what became Thunkable. And so, I think it's one of those cool things where if you follow your excitements and passions, it will turn into more and more for you.
Okay, and now let's talk about passion. Last question before we move on to Thunkable. Tell us your experience after MIT. I know you worked with the Khan Academy for quite some time. I remember these were years ago when you were telling me that, Rishi, we're actually creating, all these videos and all the instruction material into different languages for people probably in South Asian countries. And this is probably like 6 or 7 years back when no one really at that point knew about the Khan Academy as much as they do now. And of course, Khan Academy's got a tie-up in India now. But lead us through your years right before Thunkable. Of course, you're sort of, you dabbled with education and technology for a bit as well. And then your inspiration really for Thunkable and how that started.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate, like I said, in undergrad to be working with some amazing thought leaders. And really we were working on various ways to build, to make it easy for anyone to build anything. That's a very broad statement, but that was it, right? So at the time at MIT, I started by working on a product called Scratch, which was in its early days, and now it's become very large, drag and drop tool to teach kids to code. From there, we said, wouldn't it be cool if you could make Scratch like apps for mobile devices? And so that led us to build this thing called App Inventor, which again was a tool to teach people to code and let anyone build, the app that they wanted to build for at the time it started as just for their Android device. And then from there, after graduation, I think a couple things. During my time at MIT, I was very fortunate, as you pointed out, to work with Khan Academy in its very early days. And I think it was a handful of people in basically just one big room in Mountain View, California. And that was one of the coolest experiences, because I think what was exciting about that time was that people were just thinking about, okay, how do we actually do this next generation of online learning? So there was a thing that actually my advisor Hal had made in 2003 called OpenCourseWare. And this was a project out of MIT to videotape all of the lectures at MIT and just put them online. And that was one of the most, amazing advances in education, where all of a sudden you could watch any MIT lecture online and it was just freely available to the world. And that was really exciting. But that wasn't made for an audience that was viewing it online. It was a classroom lecture that was recorded and put online later. So it was really made for the classroom, but the content was put online. An amazing advance in what had existed before. But then the question was, how can we go to the next level of really bringing education even more online? And so I think what was really exciting is working, at the Khan Academy at that time, along with things that were happening in the ecosystem. Otherwise, actually out of, a bunch of folks I was working with at MIT were actually building what became MITx and edX at the time. So I also had a front row seat to watch that happen. And then there were a whole bunch of other tools that were coming out, things like Coursera and Udacity, et cetera, all around that same time, 2010, 11, 12, 13. And so for me, I think it was just so cool to have a front row seat to what was happening there and actually witness and watch education move really online for the first time, I think. And that was really exciting. And then after that, a good friend of mine from MIT actually had started an ed tech company called Quizlet, and he was working on basically making it easy for people to study, because after the tools like, let's say, a Khan Academy or something at X, where you can learn content, how do you actually study the content, review the content, and prepare for tests, things like that. And so my good friend Andrew made this company Quizlet, and I joined him pretty early on to actually build out the mobile side of Quizlet. So to build the first Quizlet Android app, and then figure out how do we actually have a mobile strategy, because before I showed up, it was all really just online, just on the web, and there was no mobile options. And so joined him early there and really thought about what would it be like to bring this kind of learning material, this kind of test prep, et cetera, to the mobile device. And that was what I spent a couple years doing there, which was really exciting, hiring a team around it, coming up with a strategy for it, launching it from 0 users on the mobile app to millions, 5 million, 10 million users. It was really a rewarding experience. And I think something that was so exciting, because that's when this big shift to kind of online education began. And it was so cool to be a part of, part of that movement and actually view it all happening. And then from there, Thunkable began. And I think that was really exciting, where I had seen the world of startups and going from being, when I was at Quizlet, we had never raised any money or anything like that, up to being, a company that was doing financially well, but also able to raise venture capital money, able to grow the team rapidly and see kind of rapid growth. That was really exciting. And I think something that we had noticed is when I had left MIT and I had left our App Inventor project, it was doing really well, but it was something that we had thought of as a research project, and we wanted to turn it into a company. We had talked about that for years, but we wanted to see how it was actually growing. And in the time I left MIT, App Inventor went from like a good project that some people were using to having over 5 million people who had built over 20 million apps in 195 different countries. And so it went from being a cool research project to an enterprise level scaled out project that was much more at that point than a research project, but actually was really, the precursor to what would be, a very large global company. And that is when we said, I was talking to my team, my advisor, like I said, had Hal Abelson, my co-founder who was my lab mate at MIT, Wei Hua Li, and we were all talking and realizing, hey, we need to turn this into something more. And it was, the three of us and a number of other folks. We had actually started as a Google research project, and the guy leading the team at that time at Google, this guy Mark Friedman, there's folks all over, and we were talking, and everyone was saying, hey, there's something going on here. There's something more here. And so in kind of late 2015, early 2016, we said, okay, it's actually, time to take the plunge and go do this full time, because we realized we left it on the side. That would be cool. But if we actually went and invested in making this thing big, there was a huge opportunity to be the leader in no-code mobile app building. That was something that was really exciting to us. And, you know, now entering our 6th year, still something that we're just getting started with and just scratching the surface of, but something that we're seeing just a huge opportunity, and it's something that we're so excited about.
Wow, I think this fits in the theme of you helping people build things. I think that's been from the beginning, and now your company is actually helping people build applications that solve all sorts of problems all around the world. So I'm so happy that you know, with Thunkable, and I remember using it in 2015, 2016 when it was just launched, and thinking about, okay, when is the Apple version going to come out? And you know, at that time, I think you started with Android, and now, of course, you have iOS and Android both for Thunkable and for users. And can you tell us a little bit about the growth of Thunkable, and for our audience, again, in very simple terms, what Thunkable actually helps them do, and then we're going to talk about a few challenges and the road ahead for Thunkable in the next couple of questions.
Yeah, so Thunkable is a drag and drop tool for anyone to build mobile apps. If you don't know how to code, or you do know how to code, but you want an easy tool to build an app, we're there for you. It's really, you know, especially focused on creatives. So designers, product managers, people, entrepreneurs, people who have ideas and say, hey, I don't know how to actually build this, but I can design it. I can think it through. I use Photoshop, I use Figma, I use a tool that I can actually design this out, and I have a whole game plan. I know who I want to use it, but I don't want to spend a lot of money getting a developer who I need to pay, who's really expensive to do this. But I want to be able to publish to Android, as you said, to iOS, to the web. I want to be able to publish cross-platform apps, and I really want them to be native apps. I want them to be able to use the hardware of the phone. I want them to be able to work offline. I want it to actually look like an iPhone app on the iPhone and look like an Android app on Android. You know, that's what we're there for. We are the no-code app builder for anyone who wants to design and build their own mobile apps. And so that's, you know, that's really what we do. And in terms of, you know, where we are today, I think we started, as you said, as an Android-only app builder, and we've spent the last few years, one, just building out the product offering. So it started as Android, adding iOS to it, adding web to it, making it so that it was even easier to get started, making it so that we had all kinds of really nice integrations with things like Google Spreadsheets. So if you have your data stored in a spreadsheet, you should be able to just integrate it to us. If you want to do image recognition, we work closely with Microsoft's image recognition team, so you can do image recognition and emotion recognition, things like that. If you want to do things like payments or chat bots or translations, we have all of that built in, plugging into sensors, hardware, software, etc. So the last few years have been really building that part out. That's been tremendously important to us. And then really just growing our user base and making sure that we're talking to them and doing the things that they need the most, making sure that we help them with publishing the apps to the app stores, because that's a really complicated process, making sure that once you've actually submitted your app, we explain and help you make money off of it by putting ads in your apps, things like that, right? That whole process is what we focused on. And you know, we've gone to have over 1 million people building apps on our platform in every country outside of North Korea. We have a tremendous number of different types of folks using it, from, you know, kids in high school who are building their first apps up to professionals at very large companies that you know the names of, who need to use us to prototype, to help close sales, to help actually deliver projects on time. It's really amazing. And like I said, the sweet spot really is when you see those designers, entrepreneurs, product managers, people who say, I have an idea, I don't know how to code. What can help me execute on this idea faster? And that's when they turn to Thunkable.
Okay. Wow. Did I hear it correctly? You said everyone is using Thunkable outside of North Korea?
Yeah, I think we have users in every country outside of North Korea.
Wow, that's incredible feat, Arun. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. I know your time is precious, not going to take more than 10 minutes. But talking about entrepreneurship, tell us about, I mean, we've already heard about your journey in Thunkable, but for the road ahead now, what is something really exciting and cool that you feel you're working on, number one? And number two, we have discussed this before, but tell me maybe a couple of apps that have come out of nowhere. And I know you spoke about this in our early entrepreneurship program as well, but a couple of apps that really blew your mind, and seeing what kind of change that these apps are bringing in people and in countries around the world.
Absolutely. So I think to answer the question on apps that have been blowing my mind, I think there are so many. I mean there are literally millions of apps that have been built on Thunkable, and to see the diversity in terms of what people have come up with is just mind blowing. So I think what's cool is also that they serve so many different types of purposes and types of people. So one app that I had talked about with you before that I'll share again that I think is really cool is in the country of Yemen. There's been a civil war going on since 2014, late 2014, 2015, and one of the things that's happened is the different sides have actually tried to take out the power sources of the opposition because. Of course, if they don't have power, it's hard for them to operate, to live. If they don't have electricity and they can't see things, etc., it makes sense. So one of the things that really happened was there was a big push to solar power, which is phenomenal, and it makes not only for cheaper power, it also makes for more environmentally friendly work. It also means that not everyone has to be reliant on this one central power source, but they can all have their own power. But one of the problems with the solar panels is no one knew actually how to control their solar panels. So how much power do I have during the day? How much will I be able to make it through the night? How do I tilt my panels? Things like this, basic questions that no one thought about. So there's a gentleman by the name of Anwar Al-Haddad, and he had this idea of, well, wouldn't it be nice if I could just build an app for me to track this for me and my family? He didn't have a software engineering background. He didn't know how to do this, but he had an idea, he had a design, and he wanted to build it. So he started building on Thunkable, put it on the app stores, and fast forward a few years, over 500,000 families and businesses have used Anwar's app to help them manage their power. The Minister of Energy for the country gave Anwar an award for helping alleviate Yemen's energy crisis, and he's turned this into an amazing and thriving business. So what's cool is not only was he able to actually help people and solve a massive problem, there are how many different food delivery apps in Silicon Valley? A number, but no one was working and spending their time actually solving this problem for Yemen. And it was a problem that affected the whole country. And now, thanks to Anwar's app that he built on Thunkable, the whole country now is more empowered to actually manage their own power. And that's, I think, one of the coolest things that I've seen. Not only a cool idea, but really scaled and turned into a fantastic business. A similar story in the United States, actually. There's a gentleman who works with the Army Corps of Engineers, which is tasked in the U.S. with helping clean up and solve problems after natural disasters. And so he was actually working in Hawaii, and after a series of natural disasters, he actually used Thunkable to build apps for the Army Corps of Engineers, and all of a sudden enabled them to serve people so much quicker than they could before. Now, when a natural disaster happens, time is of the essence. Every day that you're waiting to get people food and water and shelter is another day that they're missing out on all of these basic human needs. So by creating apps really quickly and deploying them, he's able to actually literally help save lives. And that's, again, one of the coolest use cases I've seen. And then there are a number of other use cases that are a lot smaller, but equally as impactful to businesses that have said, hey, we need to close this business. We need to help get this app delivered, and we only have a month to do it, but our engineer says it's going to take 6 months. Oh, all of a sudden they find Thunkable, and now they're able to do it in 2 weeks. What they thought would take 5 to 6 months turns into a 2-week project, right? We've seen all kinds of things like that. And why I highlight that too is it's so important that, there are these grand scale problems in the world that people are using Thunkable to solve. But there are also much smaller, much more localized problems that they have in their everyday day-to-day life that all of a sudden they don't need to say, oh, if only there was an app for that. They can now actually build that app to solve that problem.
Wow. And one part of the question also is, well, we can make it a 2-part question now. One thing that you're really excited on working on, it could be Thunkable or any other passion projects, because with you, everything that you're doing is exciting. So one thing that you really feel gets you up in the morning, and whether that's with Thunkable or any other personal project that you're doing. And maybe for a little somber note, what are 1 or 2 challenges as an entrepreneur or even with Thunkable in the spotlight that you're facing at this point in time?
Absolutely. I think, so to the first part of the question, I think there's so many things that I'm excited about in terms of what we're doing right now. I think we've just scratched the surface with what we're looking to do. And now we're really starting to, see just the potential of what we can do, the type of impact we can make. And I think that's so exciting. And so there's a number of things that we're working on right now, especially around, I'd say, a couple factors. One is around design. So just how can you come in and make the most beautiful app? I think for a long time, Thunkable was very functional and you could do a lot of things that worked well. But in this day and age, it's not just about how well things work. It's about how beautiful it is, how nice it feels. And that's something that we're really excited about, that I'm super thrilled with what we've done. And we've released a few things in the last, month or so. And we're pushing out another whole set of tools in the next, month or two, really around making it easier to make a really pretty, really good user interface really quickly. And that's something that I'm really excited about. The next part is kind of around the integrations that we're doing. Just we're increasing the partners that we work with every day and the types of things that we plug into. And I think, getting more of those on board is only making life better for all of the Thunkers out there. And then I think the last thing that I'm excited about is just on making it easy for people to work together. So making it easier for people to collaborate within Thunkable, for them to build and share and remix. And because often, you have an idea, but it's really hard just to start from scratch. It's great if you can collaborate with someone and if you can see their ideas online and then pull from their ideas and build on top of it. And so making that collaboration ecosystem better. Those are a couple of things that we're working on that I'm super excited about. And then in terms of your question on challenges, I think naturally by doing such audacious projects, such big things, that naturally leads to challenges. I think the biggest challenge that showed up recently, of course, is we're in the midst of a pandemic. And so we went from being a totally in-person company to being a totally remote company. And I think we were really lucky in the type of business that we have is naturally suited to be online. We are all about empowering people online, empowering people who have an internet connection. And so I think this was really good for us to make sure that we also felt like, hey, we can totally work online and we don't need to be, right in person together. And so I think that actually has been really great for us to, work in a different way and empathize with folks and users who work in that system. But obviously figuring out how to transfer all of our in-person practices, everything from meetings to hiring and all of that kind of stuff, whether networking events, all of that now has gone remote. And that's definitely been a learning curve for us. I'm very proud of how our team has responded. And I think not only responded internally, but also then focused on responding externally and making sure people who are running their teams on Thunkable also have the tools that they need to be empowered to be remote. But I think that's probably, the biggest challenge right now is just shifting from being an in-person company to being a remote company, and the challenges that would come with it around hiring, around that in-person, fun type of water cooler talk that you have. It's all certainly doable, and we've now built in certain times for people to socialize, to get lunch and just eat together online on video chat. But I think that's definitely been some of the most interesting and pressing challenges at the moment.
Okay. Well, on that note, I would like to thank you, Arun, once again for taking the time out, being here for the Big Red Show. For all of you out there, for more updates and to see more inspiring people like Arun Saigal, please subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll have this program also available on Spotify. I hope all of you join us there. And on that note, thank you so much once again for sharing your inspiring story with us, Arun.
Great. Thanks, Rishi. And thanks to the whole Big Red team. I love the work that you guys are doing. And I'm very excited to partner with you guys on this, on many more things. So good to see you and looking forward to doing more together.
Thank you.